Hello and welcome to my YouTube video. This video is going to be about short rows in stockinette stitch, which we're going to work. And I'm going to show you a variety of short rows so you can compare them and see which ones you like the best. This is a previous video that I did comparing short row turns in garter stitch, which there'll be a link to in this video. So we're going to start out by starting with our contrast color. The short rows will be in the contrast color. And I'm going to knit over until 4 stitches remain to make the first short row. These are decreasing short rows. I have other videos on each of the short row turn methods, so if you want to learn more about a specific method, you can go to those videos. This is just a comparison of the different methods so that you can see the results in different fabrics. There's one in garter stitch, this one's in stockinette, and the next one's going to be in reverse stockinette. So I'm going to knit over until 4 stitches remain. And then we'll perform our first short row turn. And the first one is just going to be a turn only. No special treatment. And we'll see how that looks, what kind of a hole it will leave in the fabric, if it leaves a hole. 4, 3 more. So that's where we're going to turn. There's 4 stitches left. We're just going to turn and we're going to purl back. I'm going to purl back. I'll cut the video here and I'll be back in just a second. I'm going to purl back and knit back over to the next position for a short row turn. Okay, here I am back, and we're going to knit 2 more stitches and make another short row turn. This time we're going to work a wrap and turn. And what that means is we're going to slip this stitch straight over point to point to this needle, bring the yarn forward, put the stitch back, and then take this yarn to the back. If you're a thrower, let me show you what it looks like. It's basically the same thing, you're just holding the yarn in the other hand. You bring the stitch over tip to tip, bring the yarn around, move the stitch back tip to tip, and then take the yarn to the back. So now you have that necklace around that stitch. Some people do it this way, the way we just did it, and some people do it this way. They bring the yarn forward first, then slip the stitch, then take the yarn back. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. So we're just going to leave it like this since we just did that. But we made our first turn here. Here's the second turn, but you'll notice it creates a gap between the first and the second stitch of the 4 stitch group. Now we're going to knit back. And I'll be back in a second to do the next turn. Okay, now we're back, and let's see, that was our last turn right there, so we want to work up to here. Again, this will be a wrap and turn, the same as the last time, because when we come back and work the light row over these to cover them, this one we're not going to conceal so that we can see what it looks like on the front of the fabric. This one we will conceal so that we can compare them. So we're going to slip it tip to tip, bring the yarn to the front, move the yarn to the back, and now we're going to work back. And then I'll be back here in just a second, and we'll do the next one. Okay, so here we are back to another turn. This time we're going to do one that's called a yarn over short row turn, and that means we turn the work first, and then we just put the right needle under the yarn and make the first stitch. And that makes a yarn over and the stitch. Let's see that throwing. So we put the needle in front of the yarn. Normally we would put it back here if we were purling, right? But to make the yarn over, you put the needle in front of the yarn, throw it, bring it up, and you have your yarn over and your stitch. So let's go back to the other way because I'm more comfortable doing that. So when you're doing that, normally your yarn is, your needle is behind the yarn when you purl, correct? But if you're going to make a yarn over at the beginning, instead of having the needle behind the yarn, needle here with the yarn in the front, you need to have the needle in front of the yarn. I probably said it wrong, but you get the idea. And then we're going to knit back. So that's a yarn, a yarn over short row, turn. The next one's going to be a Japanese. And then we'll do a German short row. Then we'll work the white yarn over all of them and see what it looks like. Okay, so that was the last turn, so we need to make a turn here. This one's going to be our Japanese short row turn. For the Japanese short row turn, we go ahead and turn our work just like we did the yarn over. And then we're going to take a little stitch marker, a removable stitch marker, and just hang it over the working yarn. Make your stitch. And what this does is it's the same thing as making that yarn over, which would have been up on here on the needle, or the wrap. See, because that would wrap the stitch. And we're going to work back. All of these produce very close results. From the right side of the work, once they've been worked over, it is near impossible to tell. I dare you to be able to tell the difference between them from the right side of the work, even from the wrong side of the work once we're done. Now the last one, that's our Japanese. Now we're going to do a German short row. It's good to know all these. It's good to try them because you'll hear people say, well, I prefer Japanese short row, or I prefer German short row, etc., etc. Once you try them, you'll know which ones you prefer. German short row, you have to work the following stitch. This is different. So you work, our normal turn would be right here. For a German short row, you work the additional stitch across the turn. You turn the fabric with the yarn in the front. You slip this stitch straight over and you pull the stitch up at the same time. And what this does is it pulls the legs up of the stitch that's below. Here's the stitch that is below the needle. This is the stitch we just worked and we just slipped it over here. Here's the stitch below. So when you pull up, it pulls the two legs of that stitch below up onto the needle, and then you work back. So we really can't tell any difference yet because we haven't worked over the short row turns, which is what we're going to do now. The only thing we really can see is that on these wrap and turns, you can see the necklace around the front of the stitch. Those are really easy to see on the right side of the work. So we're going to take our white yarn again and we're going to cut it here from when we last used it. Okay. Now we're just going to work 2 rows of stockinette, one over and one back, so that we can see what these are going to look like. Okay, we're going to come up on the German short row turn. When we pulled that stitch up, you can see the top of it right there. Can you see that? Where the two legs are pulled up? That's called a double stitch. So in German short row directions, it'll say work a double stitch. That's a double stitch. When you slip it over and you pull the legs up, that's a double stitch. Then you knit both of the legs together of the one stitch. You consider it one stitch. And see how pushed them to the back and concealed that. Now we're going to come up on our Japanese short row turn. It's right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick that short row turn up that's on here and just slip it onto this needle. Like that. And we're going to work this stitch together with this stitch as a knit two together. Concealed that. Now we're going to work over to the yarn over short row turn. And here's our stitch with the yarn over preceding it. So we just knit the yarn over with the following stitch together as one stitch. Then the next one's going to be a wrap and turn, and we're going to conceal the wrap. Now you can see the wrap when you come up to it very easily on the right side of the work because the yarn is going across the stitch. We don't have yarns going across anywhere else, so it kind of stands out like a neon light. When you're doing it in garter stitch or reverse stockinette, it's harder to see. So you go under the wrap, through the stitches if to knit, and knit them together as one stitch. Then the last wrap and turn, we're not going to conceal because we want to see what it looks like if you don't conceal it. So we're just going to knit straight across. There's the wrap. You can see it right here. Here's the wrap. So we're going to knit across there. And then the last one where we just turned the work, we're not going to do anything, we're just going to knit straight. And then I'm going to purl back, and I'm going to stop the video while I do that, and come back in just a second and we'll examine these and see what we find. Okay, so we've finished that second stockinette stitch row. Tighten our yarns up here. And let's examine these turns. So we started out, we just turned. This was first one is a turn, and really there's no hole. I mean, there's a little hole there, but you would think it'd be big enough to put a button through. That's definitely not big enough to put a button through. It's really almost invisible. But there is that little blip where we turned and it pulled the white yarn from below. If this were all one color, this would be pretty much invisible. You would be able to identify it, but I don't think someone walking by on the street would see it. Second one over here is where we turned. We made the we made the wrap and turn. Here's the little necklace, and it is on the right side of the fabric. And you can see it. And that would probably bother you. Sometimes you do that as a mistake. You can fix it easily. You just drop down these stitches, just this column, and push that to the back side and work back up. It's super easy to fix, so don't get distressed about that. You can even drop way down and fix it. The next one is right here, and this is where we concealed the wrap and turn. Here's the yarn going around the back. That was the wrap. It had gone around this stitch. Now it's behind the stitch. You can see the shoulders of it. The next one over is going to be the yarn over, and here is the yarn going over the top. You can see on the shoulder here. You don't see it so much on this side, but it's right there. The next one is the Japanese short row turn. It's right here. And you can also see, let's take a look. You can see that yarn coming up on the shoulder. Here it is right here. Here's the yarn coming up on the shoulder, going around this stitch right here. Then the next one is the German short row short row turn, and it's right here too. So from this side, they pretty much are identical. You can see where it turns because you come over and it ends and goes back, comes over, ends, goes back. Same here. It's not a real super smooth, but it's smooth to tell the difference, differentiate it. Let's look at this side now. So here's our turn, and this is where it's pulling that little white blip of yarn forward that you could see on the other side, but there's really not any significant hole. Here's the one that we did in the garter stitch. The next one over is right here, and this is the wrap that's going around that stitch that's still there. Over here, we concealed the wrap, and when you conceal the wrap, what it does is it makes this C behind the work. You can see the yarn comes up here, goes underneath this, and then comes over here. This is the C of that wrap being concealed. Then we'll go over here. Here is the C from the yarn over. Can you see when I pull this, it pulls on this right here, it makes this C, goes right there. Then the next one's the Japanese short row turn, and again, it's right here, it makes this C. See when I pull here, it pulls up here? That's the C. And then on the German short row turn, same thing, right here. Here's the C. So basically, see it when I pull here, it pulls up there. They are all the same thing. Just different methods, just more than one way to skin a cat. But the short rows all pretty much produce the same thing. And as I said earlier, some people like this one, some people like that one. Give yourself the opportunity to try them all and see which one you like. If you like my videos, share them with your friends. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button down there, that little thumbs up, and leave a comment. I also have a group on Ravelry. It's called Knitting with Suzanne Bryan that you can join, and one on Facebook that says Knitting with Suzanne Bryan. And in those groups, we talk about stuff like this. It's all educational. I would love it if you joined in on the conversation. Take care and happy knitting.